Hello and welcome back to the Sidetracked Sport podcast. I'm your host, Jasmine, and today I'm joined by Harvey, and we're going to be talking all about autistic experiences of watching live sport, including our own sort of experiences in that. So, hello and welcome, Harvey. How are you doing?
I'm all good. Thank you very much for having me.
And so, if you don't know who Harvey is, I would describe you as a content creator. That's how I
Yeah,
came across you.
newish.
And do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what sports you like and who you support?
Yeah, so I'm in the category of sort of late diagnosis of autistic. I was diagnosed at 20. I'm 23 now. And I've been on a journey since then of sort of discovering who I am and then looking back on like school, college, why I behaved the way I did, why teachers said the things that they did. So yeah, I've kind of been on a journey of discovering myself, and that's kind of why I wanted to lean into the content creation, leaning down like the autistic content creation path, I suppose, sort of making people feel like they're not alone. And I feel like in football as well, it could be a very taboo subject to speak about neurodiversity in sport and in football. It's not really spoken about at all. I mean, there's only off the top of my head a handful of footballers that are actually like known as neurodivergent. So yeah, kind of going down that route of helping people sort of feel like they're not alone. My interest of sport comes from I'm a massive football fan. I'm born and bred Ipswich fan, supported Ipswich all my life since I don't know, since birth, I suppose. Season ticket holder, used to go home and away. Now just go to home games after saving for a house. The away days are quite expensive. So yeah, it's I wanted to sort of combine the two together and sort of make people feel in the football space if they are autistic, neurodivergent, ADHD, etc., that they're not alone and that they can sort of come to a space and discuss opinions and their experiences. And I sort of want to express how I experience sport as well, I suppose.
It's really interesting, and I think it would be great to talk because I think for us it's also important to preface that obviously my experience is not your experience and it's no one else's experience. We're not obviously covering everyone. Just want to get that out there right at the start before we dive into everything, because everyone does experience things differently, and that's kind of the beauty of it. But in what we discuss, I think from our very short conversations before, like some of the things we do experience in different ways. And so I think it'll be quite interesting to see how both of us being autistic actually experience live sport in very different ways and see pros and negatives in how we feel about things. And so I guess I wanted to start with you. You do a lot of content on when you're going to football games, actually, you find it's almost like homely in a way. Is that a
Yeah,
good way to describe it?
yeah, I suppose it is. It makes me feel comfortable. It's one of the only spaces around people, I suppose, that I feel most myself and most comfortable. And I suppose it comes from like the sense of community and belonging. And I've never really felt like I fit into school groups or massive friendship groups and that kind of thing. But the football kind of gives me that community feel, I suppose. And yeah, like I say, a homely feel. I feel at home at the football is where I'm most comfortable. I'll happily talk to people at the football, whereas I've said before, I won't speak to people at family gatherings and weddings and stuff unless someone like approaches me. Uh, so yeah, I feel like I can express myself through football, and a day at the football is just like a almost like a switch off for me. I'm so used to masking through the day and school, college, work, etc. And football is just that time where I feel like I can just switch off and be me, I suppose.
And something that a lot of autistic people do sort of want and do benefit from is having sort of structure through their day, through their weeks, whatever it is. And you've said before through your content, which I found really interesting, is that actually the football is a great way of having structure because you know exactly what time it's going to kick off because they're going to get penalized if it doesn't kick off on time. You know exactly where you're going, if especially home games, you know you probably have an exact route you take, you probably get there similar times before each game, like you know step by step exactly what's going to happen and it's not really going to deviate from that. And I thought that was quite an interesting perspective. Do you want to sort of tell us a little bit more about, I guess, your match day routine and what that looks like for you?
Yeah, so I mean, for me personally, I find structure crucial. It's vital to everything I do every day. Monday to Sunday, I have to have a structure with everything. And the football I find is the only thing I can really control, I suppose, to the max. I know what train I'm getting. I get the same train. I get the same time train. I walk the same route to the train station. I get the same thing from the co-op before I get on the train. I'll get off. I mean, when a train's delayed, it kind of throw things out, but it's only usually about a couple of minutes. It's not usually that bad. I walk down the same route to the same pub that I go to, get the same breakfast, and I will leave the pub at exactly the same time, always 2:35. Walk down the same route to the stadium, get in at usually the same time. Sometimes security can be a bit of a problem. With Ipswich has recently upped the security and stuff, and it sometimes takes a bit longer to get in, and that can be stressful if it's not the same each week. But it doesn't usually deviate much from the start to finish, and it's like I say, the kickoff time can't change. Once that's set in stone, it will kick off at 3 o'clock dead, and it's kind of the same coming out. I've got the same thing coming out. I won't get on the first train back because it's always too busy, and I have to stand up and shoulder to shoulder with people. It doesn't go well, so I'll go back to the pub, sit down, have a little bite to eat, have a drink, and then you'll get the hour later train, and it never deviates far from that. Really, it gives me that structure. I know what's happening from when I get up to when I get home, and then when I get home, it's kind of a release because the football is draining. I'm not going to change it, but it does drain you emotionally and physically for me anyway. And I will just get home and I'll just sit. I can just sit in a dark room and stare at a wall for an hour if I have to. But yeah, the actual structure of the day doesn't really deviate much at all.
It is a point that I had not really considered because, so for me, I haven't probably seen as much live sport week in, week out as say you do. I don't go to like a football game every weekend type thing. And growing up, I was often doing sport in my sports clubs as a kid rather than going to watch it. And so it's a slightly different experience for me. And so I guess going to a sport event, it's more of a one off or going to somewhere new or somewhere different, which is always good. But I don't have that same structure of like, okay, every day I'm going to get this train to go to that sport event and it's the same. And so it was a really interesting point, I think, because when it is something new, it maybe is slightly different. And have you ever experienced that if you have gone to see like a different sports event or maybe at an away day, you've found it slightly more difficult?
Yeah, I mean, especially with the away days. So I was doing them regularly. So every other week I was going to different stadiums, and I love it. I enjoy it, but I will do thorough research beforehand on where I'm getting off the coach or train or whatever, the exact walk to the ground or the whatever pub I'm going to for lunch or whatever. I will have to know the exact routes before I'm there, the timings that I'm going to get there, and it's a bit more difficult because it's further away. It's kind of a bit more out of my control, especially if you get like the coaches and stuff. You can get stuck in traffic and arrive later and don't have the time to do what you were going to do. It does throw things off, but I think even like outside of football, I've been to boxing events and tennis events, and I'll always research the turnstiles, the view from the seat, everything, amenities around it. I'll have to know what's around it. It's easier with the home games. Like I say, I do it all the time. It's now part of the routine. But with the away games, it was tricky trying to sort of work out what's where, and it's a new place. But I found that if I wasn't going to football, I would never have travelled as much around the country as I would have done. It's got me out. It's got me seeing new places. It's been a blessing, really. I mean, it's bits of it are stressful, but I've kind of just sort of thrown myself in. My love and passion of football is sort of it's overcome that kind of side of things, I suppose.
That's a really good way of putting it because I guess the other thing with a lot of autistic people is we have special interests, and football is potentially one for you or sport in general. And so that is sort of a driving factor, like you said, to travel across the country that you maybe wouldn't have done beforehand, or at least not to the extent that you did to get to watch the football. And that's another thing that I guess is a positive of autism and sport or football or whatever sport it is you support, because your love for that thing might push you to go beyond the comfort zone that you wouldn't normally sort of explore beyond, I guess.
100%, yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting you said earlier about playing sport because at a young I was like 10, 11. I used to play football as well, and I thought I love football. I'm just going to play it, but team sports just don't suit me. There's too many factors that are out of my control. So
Hmm.
I ended up playing tennis. I've done a bit of boxing. Individual sports are where it's I can control it. If I lose, it's on me. If I win, it's on me. In football, I don't control that. So I think it's interesting you said that. Playing sport and watching sport is very different for me. The playing aspect really almost overwhelming and I can't control it. Whereas the watching it, I can just switch off. It's out of my control. Whatever happens, happens. It is what it is. But the actual structure around it can stay the same.
That's actually so interesting that you said about team sports because I've only done individual sports as well for sort of similar reasons of like I don't like not being able to control every aspect of
Yeah,
what's happening because if I lose, okay, I've lost. It's up to me. I can improve on that. But like if someone else is the reason we've lost, I'm not so good at coping with that. I
exactly.
know
Yeah.
everyone's trying their best, but like I want to be able to tell you what to do so that we can win. And that's really interesting. I'd never thought about that from that perspective. Like for me, I did kickboxing, I did swimming, gymnastics, athletics, like again, all individual sports. Like you train with other people, but it's the same thing
Yeah.
of like you control what you're doing and that's it. So that's really interesting. I'd never thought about that from that perspective, and that maybe that's sort of part of the reasoning as to why I preferred those individual sports.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't realize that that was probably the case until I was diagnosed autistic. I thought before it was just like, I don't like letting other people down, or if I make a mistake and I lose, and everyone blame me and all that kind of stuff. But I think for me anyway, it comes down to the controlling aspect of it, and I can control the environment of a tennis match or a boxing match or whatever. And yeah, I can't do that in a football game.
I do think it's such an interesting point, and even I think here I'm already sort of thinking about other experiences of my own and how maybe being autistic has sort of shaped those in ways that I've not really considered. And I think hopefully, like anyone listening who is autistic or knows someone who is autistic, that might help open their mind to actually maybe they are experiencing things in a way that we haven't even considered because of their autism. And I think it's a great way to look at it because, like, back to sort of traveling to watching sport as well. For me, it's always very anxiety inducing being in the stadium and being sort of next to so many people because the seats are always a little bit small. You don't have much leg room to sort of like fidget around. There's often like people like literally right up next to your shoulder because they're just trying to cram in as many people as they can to sell more tickets. And so for me, that's always quite an overwhelming experience. Is that something you get at all, or because it's a that area you're familiar with, not so much?
I think that's a big part of it because I've got my season ticket. I wouldn't ever deviate from that. I wouldn't sit anywhere else because I know the people around me, and I know that I might be funny. The people around me are quite small. I've got my own space. I can sort of spread out a little bit, but I've had it at away games before where it's kind of in football culture. We go to away games, you don't sit in your allocated seat, and there's two people in one seat sometimes, and they want to stand with mates and stuff, and they don't buy tickets together, and people all just cram into one little area. And I've had it before where that can get quite difficult. Um, but then I'll try and just shuffle away and just sort of suppress it. And I find when I'm watching football, it's fine. It's the getting in and the getting out of the away, or the different areas, I suppose, is the more challenging part, I think.
I find it similar maybe for me. Like once the like event is happening, whatever sport it is, like my mum and I went to watch the Women's Rugby World Cup final in September, and like sort of before it was happening, I think she could tell I was a little bit like, oh, there's people, even though we actually weren't in that crowded an area. But like once the game was on, like it was just okay, the women are playing, like let's just watch. And like I couldn't even think about whatever else was going on. Like it, all of your attention, I guess, is drawn to what's happening on the
Yeah,
field.
exactly.
And I think looking at it as well, I think it's also great. There's being more and more sensory rooms introduced to stadiums. I don't know if it's something you've ever seen. I don't know if it's something you've ever used, but I think that's great, especially for sort of young families coming through and maybe their kid is wanting to go to a sports event for the first time, even because then you have a bit more control over, okay, we don't need to be in and amongst a load of fans, potentially if it's a football, potentially a load of drunk fans as well, which
Yeah,
any sort of kid might struggle with, especially a neurodivergent child. And so having that as an option is something I think is also going to be really important in neurodivergent children sort of being able to get into a watch live sport.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I spoke to, I can't remember who it was, but someone else on TikTok who commented on one of my videos the other day, and they were saying that I think it's Fulham and Brighton in the Premier League have like allocated sensory rooms for young children, families, etc. And I know at Ipswich they do like sensory packs for neurodivergent children, etc., with headphones, fidget toys, etc. I don't actually know of sort of sensory rooms at Ipswich. I do want to try and push that a bit more because it would. I mean, Personally, I wouldn't use it because I don't need it, but I know a lot of people that would certainly really need that kind of space to enjoy the football. And I've also spoken to a few people recently about they used to love the football when they were younger and stuff, but now they're older and they just can't feel like they can access it. I do think it's more needed in football stadiums, an allocated area where you can go if you want to experience football in a different way. And the trouble with these sort of allocated sensory rooms, sensory areas, is that a lot of them get booked up really quickly or they're really expensive. So they're just not as accessible as I think they should be.
It's tough, I guess, because obviously the football stadiums, they have hundreds of boxes around a stadium where like companies are sponsored or you can book them out for a lot of money.
Yeah.
But like you said, like the sensory rooms, it would probably lose the stadium's money. And so whilst it probably is the right thing to do, it's tough for them to probably commit to, because also these people might have contracts for that room for years and years at a time. And it's like, okay, well, how do we take away a room that is maybe earning them like thousands and thousands and thousands a year, and try and make it either free or a low cost room for families? And you probably can't get as many people in it as if it were a box, because then it kind of ruins the point of it being a sensory
Exactly.
room because it's
Yeah.
just as crowded. And so I guess it is a tough decision, but it would be nice to see more and more stadiums have sensory rooms. Like I know Twickenham, they have one, which was actually pushed by some of the players because they have family members that are neurodivergent and they wanted their family to be able to come and watch as well, which I think is a great way for it to be pushed through, because the players obviously maybe have a tighter connection with some of the bigger stadiums. And if they're able to say, look, my family want to come and watch, but XYZ person is neurodivergent or they struggle with this aspect of like standing in the stands, then it might be more impactful in getting those rooms built and put up. But it still is long term. There, I would like to see more put in, because particularly for young children who I think are going for sort of like the first sort of times, still getting used to that environment before they can build up a routine like you've got, it can be helpful in just introducing that environment to them in a way that's not like jumping right into the deep end and is potentially a little bit dangerous in that sense
Yeah.
of causing a meltdown, or even then stopping them from, I guess, liking the sport. Because if you have that bad experience and the kid feels, or whoever, even an adult feels overwhelmed from start to finish, then they're not getting to enjoy the game as well, I guess, at the same time. And for you, do you look back at all at any times before you knew you were autistic and you struggled at a football game or any other sports, and you sort of look back now and you're like, okay, I see why I struggled with that now?
It's not so much with the football because it's kind of all I've ever known and all I've ever
Yeah.
done. But there's been occasions, say, like for, I don't know, concerts or other events in London where I've been to the O2 to watch, I don't know, tennis or boxing or whatever. It's it's the hustle and bustle of getting out, I think.
Hmm.
It's the feeling of being trapped shoulder to shoulder, queuing for tubes and stuff to get out. Um, and I don't know how it can be improved for neurodivergent people. I don't know, but it's something that I've found tricky. I think, especially in London, the venues in London, big arenas in the Premier League and stuff. When we were in the Premier League, I found the hustle and bustle of getting out and being shoulder to shoulder with people for a long period of time is very difficult.
Yeah, it's something that I think I can relate to in that as well, and probably a lot of autistic and neurodivergent people, because I feel like that's quite a common experience within us. It's not one that's quite so unique between individuals, because that idea of being so close to so many people that a lot of them you won't know, if not all of them, other than maybe like a couple people you've gone to that event with. And that can be quite overwhelming in the sense of there's lots of people probably smell a little bit after the game, whether that
There's the
be
noise as
sweat
well.
or
It's
beer
everyone
or
sort of talking
yeah,
at once, and
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've looked into recently getting myself, I can't remember what they're called. I think it's loop earbuds, just to try and cancel out some of the background noise, because that's even at home games still. I find the noise of getting out and getting back on the train and everyone talking around me, and I'm trying to focus on the train times or whatever. I found that really difficult. So I've had some recommendations from a few friends on some earbuds to get.
I do have a pair of loop earbuds and I can say they are good. So I would
That's been my
also
next
recommend them.
purchase. Then that solidified it for me. I'm getting some.
Definitely. Because, yeah, that I like when you're leaving, and I, particularly in London, like the trains are already loud enough. They're particularly like the Victoria line, the Northern line, the Jubilee line. They're so loud. And then if you've got a packed train coming out of an event as well, even just sort of waiting on the platform, everyone's trying to cram onto the platform and stand behind the yellow line, and everyone's trying to be safe. And it's a really busy and compact environment that can be really difficult to navigate. And is there, I guess, anything that you've learned from your experiences that you would recommend to other neurodivergent people of trying to find a routine that works for them?
I've found a lot of it is leaving enough time for things, whether it's before or after. It's not trying to be the last one in and the first one out kind of thing. I I get laughed at by a few mates of how early I actually leave for games. I'll leave for a 3 o'clock kickoff at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I live half an hour away from the stadium. But it's just giving me that time that I know that if something does happen, I still have enough time to carry on with the rest of the structure. It might get thrown out by half an hour or something, but I still have enough time to do the rest of my routine from start to finish. And it's the same with getting out. If you try and aim for that first train or try and get out in the car straight away and you're crammed in and you can't get out, that's been really stressful for me before. So just leave it in an hour. It's only something that I've started to do very recently. It's just leaving an hour, just getting the later train. I lose an hour at home. It is what it is. I'll just sit on a bench in a park or something, have a coffee or whatever, grab something to eat, and just wait an hour. And that next train is just completely fine. It's I can sit down, I can get a seat, and it's just like any other day, any other normal train. So I think it is just leaving the time, if possible, before and after, to still be able to fulfill the rest of your routine that you think will work for you.
I guess it's the idea of having like a buffer period between like, okay, you need to do something at this time, or have this long to sort of sit before, go to the pub or whatever it is. So let's just add like a 30-minute buffer, like you said, for instance, beforehand, just to make sure that we can do that. It's sort of planning for the plans to maybe not go to plan, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do every single day. You have to account for something going wrong, and it might seem a bit pessimistic or whatever, but if a train's delayed by half an hour, if you've left that time, it's not going to throw everything else out. And that's the thing that I found is really stressful. If it throws everything else out, that's the stressful thing. If it throws one thing out, it's stressful for a little bit, but it's like, right, we can just take this time, regulate, and then we go again and do the rest of it.
And I guess that's something that maybe neurotypical people don't understand quite so much. Like you said about your friends sort of laughing at you for heading off for a home game so early. But if it works for you, then I guess it works for you. And maybe they're the ones that sometimes are trying to cram in last minute. And you're like, I've been here for a while, guys. I'm all good in
There's
my
been
seat.
situations where, I don't know, they've missed kickoff or they've missed 5 minutes of the game, and I've been here for hours.
And I guess, yeah, for you, like, would say if you had been in a scenario where you were with them and you'd missed like the first 5 minutes, or would that have been quite a stressful situation for you at the time, do you think?
Yeah, and it's happened on an away game before. We were on a coach up to Manchester on a Wednesday evening, and there was a massive accident. There was loads of traffic, and we missed. I think it was the first 10 minutes of the game, and I just could not focus on the game. I was like, I don't. It was almost like I don't know where I am now. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on around me, and it was just 10 minutes, but it's completely thrown me out. And yeah, it was really uncomfortable, and it was for neurotypical people. It's just 10 minutes of a game. You just focus on the rest of it. I just couldn't focus on it. It was a great game, apparently, but I just couldn't focus on the rest of the game. It just completely threw it all out.
And is it that feeling of, so for me, it's sometimes the idea of like, you know, you should be watching the game, but like you're thinking about the person behind you that's maybe standing or sat a bit close and that you can feel their knee in the back of your chair, and then the person like a few seats down to your right is doing something else that you're like hyper aware of. And it's, is it for you as well more that you feel extra aware of everything else that's going on, or is it still more in your mind of you're still sort of, I guess, thinking about sort of the journey of getting there, and you've not been able to do this thing that you'd like to do, and this thing that you'd hoped to do beforehand?
I think it's a bit of both. I think. I mean, there's been
Yeah.
situations where I've been in a ground, and it's if something like completely out of the ordinary happens. So like I've been stood near someone at a away game where they were really drunk. um, they got kicked out at half time, but for the whole of the first half, all I could focus on was them shouting. And it's an away game, people are shouting, people are cheering and whatever, but it was just this one person I could constantly hear. And it was constantly, what if they do this? What if they do that? What am I going to do if they do this? What am I going to do if they do that? And I could not focus on the football. It's just one guy. Like we said before, people are drunk at football, people have a beer at the football, but it's just this one person I could just constantly hear. And it's just, I think if something is completely out of the ordinary, completely out of what I'm used to seeing and experiencing at the football, again, it will just throw things out and I won't be able to focus on anything else apart from this one like Muppet.
It is interesting as well, the idea of having like people around you that are drunk or drinking to varying extents. Because at particularly the football, I haven't really been to, I don't think I've been to many men's football games like at all, probably like less than 5 in my whole life. But I've been to a few women's football games. And for me, I feel a lot more comfortable walking into a women's football game because whilst you can drink also there, and for some games you can drink in the stands as well, which obviously you can't in men's, it feels less hostile because people are probably drinking a little bit less, or if they are drinking the same, they may be a bit less boisterous. And for me, that's something that I find I feel a lot more comfortable around in like a sporting environment. The idea for me of like going to like a North London derby and everyone around me is drunk in a men's football game is probably my worst nightmare. I don't think I could cope because I would just, like you said, like with that one guy that you could sort of just hear constantly saying something, even though everyone else is also cheering and shouting and doing whatever. For me, I would probably have a similar experience in that I'm hyperfixating on like everyone else around me and what they're doing because I'm so paranoid that something's going to happen or they're going to do something or say something or like throw their beer. I don't know,
Yeah,
like something around me is going to happen that like I can't control. Whereas in my mind, almost when everyone isn't quite so drunk at a game, it's less likely to happen. I don't know if that makes
yeah.
rational sense, but
And I've found that I've been to a few sort of non-league football games, and I found the culture at a non-league game is completely different to the professional game. It's people still can laugh, they can have a drink, and people do still have a beer or whatever, but it's nowhere near as hostile or like boisterous, like you said earlier, as like the professional game. And it's just sometimes I think that can be quite a good introduction to football. If a younger person is really interested in watching football, maybe take them down to a non-league game first. There's a lot less people there for a starter. It's easy to get in. It's easy. You can stand and be where you like. You can stand with the crowd. You can stand on your own round the side of the field or whatever. And I found that that can be almost really calming.
that's a really good point actually, yeah, of maybe like if you're going with a friend for the first time or you're trying a new sport, maybe don't go like say right up to the top leagues.
Don't
Start
jump straight
somewhere
into the deep
smaller,
end.
yeah. Start somewhere smaller and sort of start to figure out how you can sort of help yourself in like that sort of scenario, even if it's at a lesser scale. And I think that's a great way of thinking about it, really, because yeah, if you do just sort of jump right into the deep end, chances are you're going to struggle in some way, shape, or form at first. I think that's just a given, really.
And it could, it could be as extreme as then puts you off for life. You then don't want to go and watch the football. You then fall out of love with football, and you just don't ever go to another game again at any level.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of what we want to avoid in someone going to a football game or whatever get sort of game or live sport it is, having a bad experience and not wanting to ever go back again because that's sort of worst case scenario. I know it sounds extreme, but it probably has happened like to many, many people, or even just the thought of going and it being probably overwhelming, I imagine has put a lot of people off. And
Yeah,
I
hundred
think
percent.
it's a great way to sort of conclude this podcast episode and sort of summarize how the experiences are in that, like for you, the football has been a really good routine and a structure to your whole week and it benefits you. Whereas for me, going to a football game at the moment, I wouldn't really want to go to a men's game. And so I think that's a great way of sort of just really simply highlighting that whilst we're both autistic, we both experience live sport in very different ways. And particularly because you've sort of grown up going every week or most weeks, whereas for me, it's more of a one-off thing. And I think that's a great way of sort of summarizing it, really.
Yeah, there is no right way to enjoy it. You enjoy it how you enjoy it, and you cannot let anyone ever tell you how to enjoy a sport. You cannot say to someone, "Oh, you don't go at the pub before, you're not a true fan. You don't go to away games, you're not a true fan." You cannot let anyone ever tell you how you are allowed to enjoy sport.
I love that. It's a great message to close on. Thank you, Harvey.
No worries.
um, so I want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in to listen, and thank you for getting sidetracked with us. I will see you in the next episode.